When I think about blended learning in my science classroom, the first thing that comes to mind is stations. I use stations a lot. Some are hands-on individual, some are hands-on group collaboration, and then some are virtual. So blended learning has changed my classroom a lot in the last 3 or 4 years.
Blended learning has enabled me to deliver content and assess students at an individual level. I have been able to tailor the learning experience for each student. Blended learning has allowed me to fill in gaps while simultaneously teaching new material. One of the biggest challenges for me as a teacher was finding time to meet one-on-one or in small groups with students. Blended learning has given me that extra time. While some students work on content online, I can do small groups and targeted instruction. I have been able to provide an individualized education plan for each of my students.
Blended learning has really made an impact in my fourth grade class. I've noticed that it's increased the engagement in my students because not only do they love technology, but they also have some say in the activities that they choose, the order that they do it in, and it allows them to work at their own pace. Plus, there's no wait time. There's no students just waiting for others to finish. They each have their own path that they can choose. While they're working on their own lessons, this allows me to pull groups or individuals, and it also gives me a lot more data that I can look at so I can individualize this learning path, the learning paths for them. The shift to home learning was pretty easy for my class. They were used to getting their menus. They knew how to navigate the menus. They were used to having choice, so it wasn't a big deal. They did miss seeing me. We did get to Zoom, although the Zoom was kind of sketchy here and there. They did know how to ask me questions. They asked me questions on Google Classroom, which I responded to them. It was nice to see how the other students were also replying to each other to help each other on Google Classroom. That was really cool. So the home learning was pretty easy for us.
Blended learning has made a big difference in the way I teach math. Before blended learning, the struggling learners got most of my time and attention. I have 3 groups that rotate, one for small group with the teacher, one technology, and one for the math games and manipulatives. I use data from Dreambox for grouping and lessons. I am more confident that all students are being challenged. I love blended learning.
Blended learning has added capacity into my middle school classroom. And what I mean by that is that it builds in time for students and teachers to move to mastery. With this blended learning model, you're also able to make those one-on-one individual relationships that carry these students through middle school and through their secondary experience. Blended learning was a strategic, important part of a home learning experience for students and teachers. Overall, blended learning is something that our district needs. It will help build time back into the classroom. It will allow teachers to become more creative and students to become more responsible for their own learning.
Hey guys, it's Allison Hillman from EGE. This will be my 4th year using blended learning in my 1st grade classroom. I am loving using it in reading and math, and then I recently started incorporating it into science and social studies with all of the cool brain pop videos and discovery education. And I love it for my kids for a couple reasons. One is it builds independence. Once they learn the routines, they are able to get on there and do it by themselves amazingly, which frees me up for small group and one-on-one. Another thing I love is the accountability. It's very easy for me to see how they're doing and give them targeted lessons for what they need. And it's also easy for them to be able to see how they're doing and get that immediate feedback, which I love because it helps them set and track goals. And if you're on the fence about it, go for it.
I've been using blended learning in my classroom for over 4 years. As a teacher, it has empowered me to try new and creative things with my students. They go to each other for help instead of going to me for help at the first sign of trouble. And they also are more independent. They're able to do work on their own at 6 and 7 years old that is truly impressive. When it came time for home learning in March, my first grade students were fully capable of completing playlists on Seesaw. I credit that to all the work we did in the fall, getting them used to these devices and getting them used to these applications. I was so proud of them, and I can't wait to see what they do as they move on to second grade.
Hi, my name's Christy Steubing, and I absolutely love blended learning. It has changed my entire teaching career, philosophy, overall world in the classroom for the better. I will say I've been using it for the last couple of years, and there is just absolutely no going back for me. Time is the biggest thing for teachers. We have more things to teach that we can physically do in a day on top of differentiation, and blended learning has made our classrooms so much more efficient. Some of these programs that I've been using, if I sit down and analyze them, not only can I assign and target specifically what my kids need, but it can show me what my kids need before I've even gotten there yet. Computers can find things just faster sometimes, and I'll use Dreambox, Seesaw, Lexia, RazKids. I'll create assignments on all of those things. I will put blended learning assignments on technology into stations, and so part of my kids are on that. Part of my students are in stations doing hands-on spiraled activities so they can have that independent practice. While they're doing that, then I'm working with a small group, and it just works as this well-oiled machine. Adding that blended section and that technology piece into my stations actually lowered behavior issues. My kids are more on task, my stations have smaller numbers, and then my small group time is far more productive. My parents have also really loved it. The technology piece actually allows them to see some of the data that I'm seeing, so they feel like they have more information. And I know with COVID-19 and having to go to remote learning, it was kind of sudden and hard for so many reasons. Mostly for my students, it was social emotional. But when it came to not missing a beat, I will say blended learning saved our classroom, saved the end of our year. My kids were fluent with Seesaw and all of the online resources, ClassLink. We didn't even need to take that break week. We just hit the ground running, and it wasn't easy by any means, but I think it took about half the stress off of me, and my kids were able to be far more independent. It gives me a lot of peace going into this new school year that we're going to be able to be successful. Myself and my students didn't have to go through a huge learning curve. If I could promote it, if I could share it, if I could teach it, I would, because blended learning has changed everything for me. And I know if teachers gave it a try, it would do that for them too.
Blended learning is the best way to differentiate in your classroom. It takes all of the guesswork out of wondering if you reached every student in your lesson, and hoping that you're challenging the highs and filling in the gaps for the lows. It is the definition of differentiation, and now that I've learned it, I will never go back.
Blended learning helps students and teachers in so many ways. So for students, it gives them ownership over their own work and an accountability that you can't get anywhere else. The game changer for me was the engagement and the ability to meet with my students either in small groups or one-on-one on a more consistent basis. This was revolutionary for me. I got to see each student's on a consistent basis, which held them to a rigor, accountability, engagement, and relationship that is very difficult when you have 100+ students. They know that I'll be talking to them face to face. It's not just a small note on a piece of paper that they may ignore and throw away right away. And even more so, taking what they do have and bring it up to another level that they themselves didn't know that they had. Blended learning, the structure that it gives us, helps us do this. It helps us engage our students on a more deep level. So blended learning has really changed my classroom forever, and I am so glad.
Hi, my name's Allie McAllister. Part of this blended learning is to allow the kids to almost explore it at their pace, giving them a little bit more free rein and being there just to kind of aid and assist them as they're wanting to move through. These are the dates that need to be hit by this time. We're going to learn about how time management and how these due dates are important to where you are able to get to at a certain point, but that you're in control of how you get there. It allowed me to kind of see that the kids had an energy and an excitement to wanting to learn. With at-home learning, especially since spring break, we really had to focus in on kids almost working at different paces throughout the entire quarantine.